Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LoCoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin Conlon, owner of Team LoCoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com. All right, y'all, I am back with Blonde, aka Laurin. Do you want to say your last name? Because I'm pretty sure we shared it sometime, but literally, I've known you for many years.
4 years? Yeah.
Many years.
Yeah.
And like last year when you came up here to do, come up here and do some content, we did a photo shoot and whatever. And we did some YouTube videos and you said your name and I was like, what? I've been saying your name wrong for all of these years. Like, whoever made up your name needs to understand apostrophes. It's not the
Oh my God. Yeah, no, you're not the only one. I don't take offense to it. You can say whatever you want, but I think that's why Blonde works so well. But yeah, I remember that you were like, oh yeah, can you let everybody know where to find you? And I was like, does she not want to say my name? It's Laurin Dorico.
Yeah, which it definitely looks like D'Erico.
Yes.
D apostrophe Erico. So, and then you're like, D'Erico.
It really throws people for a loop. I'm like, okay. But it's like Dalia, Dorico. You know Chris D'Elia?
No, I don't know Chris D'Elia. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, now it's out there for the podcast world.
It's out there, you guys know. So yeah, so this is just Blonde. I don't know how to say her last name. I've known her for a few years. She works for me. Whatever. I don't know how to say her name.
She's fine.
It's really, we're a team here, you know. We're really a team. Also, Jill's last name is really hard to spell. She has like 2 L's and 2 P. No, I think there should be like 2 L's where there's 1 and there's like 2 P's where there should be 1. I don't know. It's like a weird thing.
I'm looking at it right now. It appears that there is 1 L and 2 P's, but the L is sandwiched in between 2 I's, so it looks very.
It looks like it should be
to read.
Right?
Can you imagine being in 1st grade and trying to write her last name in cursive?
Now you're like, All right. Well, today we are not talking about last names. I know that's what it sounds like, but we actually have a pretty cool topic because this is something that you do personally and get a lot of questions about, and that is nutrition for CrossFit. And so how long have you been doing CrossFit, or off and on? But
yeah, so I've been training strictly CrossFit since last May. So I'm just under a year, which in the CrossFit world is like so fresh.
Whatever.
So yeah, but it has been almost a year. Yeah.
So almost a year. So it is different, obviously, than physique, whether it's a physique athlete or just somebody who is, has body comp goals. So anything with CrossFit is going to be 100% performance based. Now, of course, aesthetics matter, but not for training and fueling. It's just a little bit different. And it's for something that is so intensive like CrossFit. Even if you are just training a few days a week, and this podcast is not about talking about somebody who's training multiple times a day for like the best competitions in the world. This podcast is if you are, hey, I'm training 4 to 5 times a week and I'm happen to be doing CrossFit, this is the nutrition podcast for it.
Yeah.
And we're going to go over some of the basics. And yeah, like what the top people do is very, very different as far as training multiple times a day and like that is their whole life. And that's just a different conversation. So We're not there. And most people, that's not really applicable for most people. I would say that most people who do CrossFit are kind of in this camp. Like, hey, I go a few times a week and like, that's my exercise that I do. So the biggest thing that you get asked about and just in general is going to be like what to eat before and after. And again, fueling for physique-based training is very, very important too. Like we'll just call it bodybuilding training for all intents and purposes. Fueling for that is very important, just because of how nutrients are partitioned, and then also like how that affects your training performance and how you recover and how you grow. But this is going to be different for like the immediate like event, and this is just more like athletically based. So what are some of the suggestions that you give people pre and post workout?
Yeah, so pre and post workout, we want to a majority of the carbohydrate consumption during the day, pre and post workout. That's what's going to be utilized best. And especially for the pre-workout period, we want to have something that's going to give us quick energy and not slow down digestion. So this is why I tell people to essentially remove fats from the pre-workout meal. and if they're not removed completely, because obviously there's always trace fats and stuff, keep it minimal. Like we don't want it to be loaded with fat because that slows down digestion. So the way that you're getting fuel is just not going to be as efficient if you incorporate fats into that meal.
So like less than like 10.
Oh yeah. So Lauren and I were talking beforehand, and this is going to kind of depend on when you're training. And so I'll go ahead and talk about like a pre-workout snack as opposed to like a pre-workout meal. So again, timing is going to be different for everybody. Lauren has mentioned that she is able to eat pretty closely to training and be totally fine. So you might be somebody that could eat the meal that I'm going to talk about and go into training session and be okay. Or you might be someone like me that if you did that, you would projectile vomit everywhere. So you might need more of a snack. So we'll go with both of those. So as far as like a meal goes, if you are somebody that's going to be eating a meal, say like an hour and a half to 2 hours before, we want to see something that is going to be a starchy carb. So you could do like your sweet potato, your regular potato, your rice, your oatmeal, whatever. And then I like to kind of see that matched with a protein around the same gram, a little less probably than the carb, but around the same, because that's going to help to stabilize your blood sugar so it doesn't just spike immediately 2 hours before your workout and then you have this crash. Yeah. So that's kind of my suggestion. Again, keeping the fats to a minimum. So if there's some fat and go ahead.
But that is the importance of having some fat, because if you have none, then it really is going to spike.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah.
If you just have, a chicken breast with like a boatload of rice, right? That might digest too quickly and then you're going to kind of crash. So if you're going to have, a chicken breast, maybe have like half an avocado with it, right? Like a few grams of fat or whatever, you know what I mean? And then that might be better. Again, it's going to depend on you, but I know that for me, if I have like no fats, then I'm just like, it's just too quick. For the pre-workout meal, not afterwards, but pre, especially if you're eating that far out, that can kind of cause like a crash. But some people eat pretty low fat and they're fine, just because they're eating lower fat throughout the day anyway. So like, for example, like Ryan eats lower fat, way high carbs. So for him, it ends up being fine. So it just also depends on how much you're eating as well. But I just wanted to add that in there, that it can digest too quick if you have like nothing.
Yeah. And I guess I'm thinking, like you have 2 eggs with oatmeal. So then you have like
exactly
7 to 10 grams of fat with your carb, or you have, you can still have a chicken breast that maybe has like 3 to 5 grams of fat and then you have your carb. So I just don't want people to like have oatmeal with like 2 tablespoons of peanut butter and get like 16 to 20 grams of fat before. That might be okay for your post. I would still keep it a little lower post for the same reasons. And especially just because we want to replenish the glycogen stores. So getting the carbs sent to the muscle quickly after the workout is important. But I wouldn't be so scared of the fat post-workout as opposed to pre-workout, just because of the digestion purposes before your training. If you are going to be working out within like an hour, hour and a half, so a little closer to the training session you're eating, what I have been doing that I really like is just doing like a whey isolate protein shake and then some dried fruit, because that gets quick digested, rapid assimilation protein, and then a fast acting carb. So I don't know why I couldn't speak there for a second, but that's what I've been doing. And that's worked out well. And then I mix the shake with almond milk. So that has 3 to 5 grams of fat. So again, kind of what we already talked about, but those would be 2 options. What I don't like to see for most people, unless you are sure you can digest it, is somebody do like the chicken meal with their carb like an hour before, because it just takes a lot more for your body to digest that type of protein as opposed to if it was like a rapid assimilation whey shake. Yeah, you're okay.
If I had the shake and the fruit, I would literally train in like 5 minutes after.
Oh yeah. And I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it too. Like if you're on the go and you're in the car, you can eat that easily. But
if again, I ate that like too far out, I'd be starving.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah. Like, that's what we were talking earlier, is like, we can't really give a time frame for people to eat because it's going to be so person dependent. But typically I would say a meal about an hour and a half before, and then you can do a snack like an hour before. So mess around with that a bit, but at the end of the day, it's all individualized. So it's very hard to give strict carb numbers, strict protein numbers, and a strict time frame for people.
Depends on how much you're eating too. You know what I mean? Like are you eating 700 grams of carbs a day, or are you eating 100? You know what I mean? Like that's going to be a conversation.
Well, and then that's another thing too, I guess we could go into, is just like, you cannot eat squirrel food, like squirrel amounts of food and train CrossFit. You absolutely cannot. And as Lauren said, like it's going to be different in that you're not necessarily like physique goals are not first because it is a performance-based sport. However, if you're fueling appropriately and you're training CrossFit, your physique will follow essentially. So it's very, very important to fuel for performance and not be scared to eat, because if you do not, and we are kind of also discussing this, is like when you finish a really hard CrossFit training session and something that's very glycolytic and very like power based, quick, high intensity, you will be like savage hungry. And if you don't give into that and like refuel appropriately, first of all, your recovery is going to be trash and you're going to feel like shit the next day, especially if you're new to CrossFit. It can take like weeks to feel like you're not dying every day because it's just such a different stimulus. So it's very important to not be afraid to give into that hunger and fuel appropriately and eat more than maybe you think that you should, especially if you're transitioning out of a physique-based sport like bodybuilding into CrossFit. It almost feels wrong to do that, I would say, because you're not used to eating like that. But if you are eating whole foods, good nutrition, and appropriately fueling, good quality, good quantities, you will be fine and it will be used appropriately and all will be well.
Yeah, it's so different. Even me recently now, my training, well, it's been a little bit different with quarantine because we have full access to a gym. But I've changed my training because I said, you know what, like I'm actually going to really try and focus on being better for jujitsu. Still, like same conversation though, like I go a few days a week. I'm not trying to be like a world champion. So different, I'm not going multiple times a day, like none of that shit, right? I go 3 to 4 times a week. That's awesome for me. But I can change my training, like my lifting, to benefit that more than just doing hypertrophy training, right? So we've changed my training block to like I'm including like some jump training. I'm still doing progressive overload, like heavy, strength training. I'm also doing hypertrophy work and I'm doing some kind of conditioning, but I'm doing it in an amount that is not like just blowing my face off with hypertrophy work so that I can't walk, for 2 days. Right. I'm doing like a well-rounded approach to just be like more well-rounded in general. And so we started off the quarantine. I was doing like a aerobic conditioning kind of circuits. I did that for 3 weeks. It fucking crushed me, you know what I mean? But it was really good. Did like a deload, and then I just did 3 weeks of that kind of a block. Now we're going to do another deload, and I can feel that I'm in much better shape. So I'm really excited for like when jiu-jitsu does start again. But yeah, it's a totally different thing. Like when you're training like that, even lifting like that, but also especially if I am going to class and then coming back, I'm somebody who stopped eating pretty early, or I used to. And it was just kind of a habit that I was in. Right. And I would just finish eating dinner at like 7:00, like, or, around whatever. And then I'd, maybe have a snack, but probably not. Right. And then I started taking the classes, and the classes start at 8 or 8:30 at night. And then we're there, the class is like an hour plus, there's a little break. And then there's like rolling for like an hour and a half. Like, so I'm there getting home at like 11. And at first I was like, well, I'm not going to eat anything. It's so late. And I did that for like a few weeks. And then I was like, wow, this is not working. And so I now have like protein. I get in the car and I have a protein shake with some carbs and still come home and eat like a snack too, because I knew like, hey, this is like I'm not going to recover. And, because I just trained so much, I could digest it fine. It wasn't like an issue like, oh, I'm eating right before bed and I'm going to feel so sick. It was still like
right.
But I notice a huge difference if I don't have the protein and carbs when I come home. Oh my God, it's just like game over. Like I'm just trash.
Yeah.
So pre and post workout nutrition is so important. And then just fueling in general, like understanding like the differences like with recovery, like, because that's really the biggest thing is that you'll notice is like, it might not be that one session, but if you're doing 4 to 5 sessions a week and you're not fueling properly. So like you maybe like Monday, Tuesday, you're kind of like, hit or miss. But then like later in the week, you're going to do your training and you're going to be like, wow, like I have no pop, I have no push, I have no endurance. And people always talk about like, oh, I'm fading through my workouts, right? And like, I see that a lot when people aren't fueling enough or fueling at the right times either. Mm-hmm. Like they're like, oh, I really like eating before bed, but I'm not really eating much around training. Sorry. Suck. If you want to actually improve your training, whether it's improve your training intensity, your performance, your recovery, your muscle growth, whatever it is, you need to care about what you're eating before and after. And that's so important, especially with something like CrossFit that is it's just much more intense. And like you said, you notice if you're not eating enough.
Well, and you have to realize too, with this type of training, it's almost like total body training every day. So it's not like you're going to the gym for hypertrophy, you're doing upper body, and then the next day you're going and you're doing lower body, and it's split. And I know that we talked about the fact that a lot of times, even with bodybuilding competitors, maybe on like a heavy leg day, they might eat a little more, or maybe they're prescribed a little more that day as far as carbs go, just to kind of replenish and refuel. And especially, it's just such a large group of muscles. But when you are working that every single day, it's just even more imperative. And like Lauren said, just being able to kind of be intuitive with it and moderate your intake based on how you're feeling is really important. And I think that that can also be something that is a challenge for people switching over from a more of a bodybuilding physique style work ethic into more of a CrossFit, because it really is about being intuitive. And a lot of times coming out of the bodybuilding world, it's more about like, well, I can't eat more because I don't have the macros for it. Whereas in CrossFit, it's like, you're hungry, you need to eat, or else you are going to die in your next workout. You just can't push.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think being able to just moderate and understanding that some days you're going to be a little heavier on the food, some days you might be a little lighter. And again, as we always discuss, it will even out. And you'll kind of like learn that as it goes, and maybe kind of what types of workouts tend to burn you more. Like, is it the barbell cycling? Is it the aerobic workouts? Like, which ones really
Harder
burn you? Yeah. And then you can eat a little more appropriately.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's also important too, like there's a difference of like, let's say you do have, you know, bodybuilding training is your focus. And let's say you are prepping for a competition and you're really lean and your food is low. Like, yeah, training's going to suck. Sorry. But there is a big difference of, still, you can still prioritize your nutrition. Me and Karina just did a podcast on meal timing. We still talk about all these things, like pre and post workout is super important. You know what I mean? Especially if you're dieting. And then me and Jill did a caffeine episode a few weeks back. And like, so if you are in a calorie deficit and say you don't have food, well, hey, you need to bolus your caffeine appropriately too. So there's so many different things that you can do. Now, I wouldn't say blow your face off with caffeine before you go do a CrossFit workout, probably have a heart attack, a little bit different, you know what I mean? So, I mean, some caffeine is probably fine, but there's definitely going to be a different limit there. Which is going to be different for everybody. But the same thing with jiu-jitsu, like I can go in and I can have caffeine because I metabolize caffeine pretty well. But I'm not like taking scoops of pre-workout to go roll. Like I would literally die. You know what I mean? Like, it's not smart. But it's going to be different if I'm going to have a really hard like deadlift session and then I'm going to do some hypertrophy work afterwards. Hell yeah. If that makes sense, you know? So, you kind of just have to understand that and understand what you're doing. You know, why you're doing it. And, you know, at first, if you are switching over to CrossFit style training and you're interested in it and you want to do it, or even if you only do it a few days a week, like maybe you only just try it, like, hey, like I have 2 days a week where I do like more CrossFit style training, right? Like I know Karina's been like blending it and stuff too. You know, so it's not like you have to like join a CrossFit gym and only do that, right? Like you can blend this. So some days, you know, just figure out what works for you. Like, hey, okay, I need to eat a little bit more. And if you do have a coach, you know, you guys obviously can moderate that and understand that no matter what you're doing, whenever you're training, whenever you're changing something, no matter what kind of training it is, it's going to take time to figure out what works best. It's going to be trial and error. So, you know, hey, I tried this pre-workout meal. It didn't work. Let's try a new one. Let's do this. You know, and then you guys can kind of tinker that. And that's what we do with a lot of our clients. It's like, hey, let's try this for the next week or two. Okay, now we're going to tinker this, try it again, see what works. And like, that's how you develop the best plan. So if you're trying something new like this, don't be discouraged. Like, oh my God, I tried this and like my recovery's suffering. Okay, we might need to moderate how much food you're having, or what the next point was going to be was like hydration and electrolytes. Like that's super, super key for particularly something like CrossFit.
Yeah. And I was also just going to really quickly add that the quality of food for recovery, it becomes even more important, especially when there's such a big stressor on the body with these types of workouts. And like obviously there's going to be an inflammatory effect with any type of workout that you're doing because you are stressing out the body, you are damaging the muscle tissue. But especially with CrossFit, if you want to recover appropriately, like you really do need to make sure that the quality of your food is there, because again, it can be tempting when you are starving to like reach for something that's just carb heavy that maybe isn't the best choice. And again, we always say it's okay to do that in moderation, and things of that nature. But as far as the average goes for the week, we really want to make sure that we're choosing quality foods, just because you will not recover if you're not eating foods that are geared towards helping you with that. So if you're eating very inflammatory foods, like you're not going to have less inflammation. So that's just something else. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about like, yeah, what? we're going to talk about the importance of hydration and electrolytes and things like that. So very, very, very important with this high intensity training, especially as it's getting a little hotter out now. So sweating bullets in the gym and just losing a lot of electrolytes in your sweat. And just hydration status in general. So obviously you don't want to be crushing a gallon of water right before your training session and then feel like shit, but we want to make sure that throughout the day it's consistent so that because it affects you going into the next day. So whatever your water intake is, we do want to try to keep that relatively consistent. So a good starting point for most people that are active regularly is about a gallon a day, and keeping that consistent is really important, and then increasing it as needed with your performance. So if you're feeling like you're cramping, your recovery is really bad, again, hydration can have an impact on that, and just losing too much electrolytes and not replenishing them. So that's your sodium, magnesium, potassium, things like that. So Lauren's going to talk about the specific electrolyte replacement that she uses that I have not experimented with.
So it's called Thermo Tabs, and they're very, very inexpensive. You can get them at some drugstores, or you can just order them online. It's like hit or miss, like what drugstores have them. So I would just order them online. They're very, very cheap. They're unflavored, and they're supposedly they dissolve. They honestly don't dissolve that great, so we just kind of take them as like pills, and they are pretty big and they're not coated. So like I've done it where I like try to put them all in my mouth at once, and then they kind of start to dissolve because they're salt, and they're like, oh, it's so terrible. So do them one at a time if you're going to take multiple. And I would argue that honestly, like this is something that's changed over the years with me, but proper electrolyte balance, no matter what kind of training you're doing, even if you're doing bodybuilding training, which is, arguably like the least, I don't want to say it's the least intense because it's intense in different ways. So
taxing to your system. I don't know. I get what you're saying.
Typically you're indoors, and, CrossFit box is going to be a lot different. Like there may or may not be air conditioning. Wow, I said air conditioning. There may or may not be. There's
that accent.
There's always something.
Yes.
I can never do a podcast without doing something weird. Okay.
I thought we were going to get through 2 today with nothing, and I was so sad. There it is. You kind of did on the last one. You were like, what did you, I don't even know what the fuck you did. I just look up and Lauren's like punching the air. I was like, what are you doing?
I was trying to do like a kickoff. Like, I don't
know. Like a football.
Yeah, but I don't know how to do that, obviously. And I tried, and it was visible.
Oh, man.
I failed.
I thought you had like your boxing hands up.
I was trying to kick it like a football, but that didn't work out either. So you know what? We got 2 guys. Leave it to me. But so no matter what you're doing, whether it's powerlifting, bodybuilding, CrossFit, martial arts, whatever it is, you really need a proper electrolyte balance from a sweating perspective, from a pump perspective, from just like the proper muscle contractile, properties, like sodium, potassium pump, like that is a real thing. So the reason that we like Thermotabs is because they are very cheap. And some of the other ones like that I know that are like flavor and whatever, like they're like, that's all nice, but like I really don't care. So I just use those, and like I said, they're like $7, so you can't really, for like a whole bottle, like a lot, like 100 tabs or something. So like can't really beat that. And you typically, you have to see how much, because everybody's a little bit more, some people are more sensitive to sodium than others, not from a bloating perspective, from a digestive perspective. So if you like hammer too much salt, you could have some GI distress. So that would be alarming before training. So just start off with like 1 pre and post. Like I can do multiple, but that's also because I salt my food, and so I'm used to that. But it's a really good time to, have electrolytes as before and after. And I notice a huge difference in just how I feel, like physically when I have that versus when I don't. And especially right now, even though I am doing, this kind of mix of training, it's still in our garage and it's still hot. So depending on where you're at, it's really going to affect you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think you nailed that there. And again, like, a lot of times I found at least that I have a couple of clients that struggle with their water intake, just keeping it consistent throughout the week. So something that I like to recommend is, obviously we want a majority of your water to just be water. Like I don't want you dumping a shit ton of Crystal Light in your water and all of that. Like I want you to have water, but something that can be helpful as well, besides just getting like, I think that if I have like a 32 ounce water bottle like this one and I fill it up 4 times, that's a gallon. So just mentally, it's very easy to get there. But if you're somebody that doesn't necessarily tend to reach for your water, or you just have a hard time hitting that, it can be helpful to do like maybe one Powerade Zero or one Gatorade Zero, one vitamin water zero throughout the day, because that'll get you another 20 to 32 ounces depending on the size of the bottle. It has flavor, so it has taste, and it's just another way. And again, like some of those are marketed as like electrolyte replacements. There is not enough sodium in those to be an electrolyte replacement. Give me a break. But it can be helpful as far as water intake goes, and that's what we're after here. So
I also find too that people, when they struggle with water, having just like a big amount in the morning, like, hey, wake up and like have like 24 ounces of water when you wake up.
Yeah.
And like that way you at least kick off your day, because I find that that's when people don't drink, is they just wake up and they're like, whatever. And then nobody wants to like chug a bunch of water before they go to bed, obviously.
Right.
So if you start off your morning like drinking a good amount, that usually helps. And then the other thing too is straws are a game changer. Like I will drink anything out of a straw 100 times faster. So I typically, and I just like it, but I find that it's just, if you really struggle with water, getting like kind of reusable straws, like I have like a bunch, and, just like wash them, obviously. No, just don't wash them. It adds to the, your gut microbiome. Just don't wash it. Just kidding. That was a joke. But what if I actually said it on a podcast? And like, I was like, hey guys, listen, I know it's kind of radical, but don't wash your straws. We're really trying to improve, the bacteria in there.
Like, I know it's weird, but hear me out.
Hear me out. Honestly, there's probably somebody who fucking said that. Like,
I'm sure.
There's so many, like, the gut health world is filled with crazy, crazy stuff. So
it's like, we don't even know enough to say anything. Please stop.
Please, that's totally made up. So anyways, not going to rant on that. So you're getting in enough water, you're getting in enough electrolytes. Yes, it's fine to get some flavored stuff in there as well. But yeah, in general, that can create some other issues too, with just like always crushing that stuff. And now some people have no problem with a ton of artificial sweeteners, but other people do. And I find that just in general, like it's just, hey, just get in water. You know what I mean? Like don't be a child.
You don't want to get into that habit. I think
because then you can't drink anything or eat anything that's not overly sweetened. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I could see that. I think
I see that all the time with people.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of scary, like how like fast some people go through like the squeezy bottle of stuff, and like I don't ever do that, every once in a while. But ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dieting, right? Like I get it. Like it becomes a dieting habit because you're like, I want anything to feel like something.
Oh yeah.
So you're like excited about this like drink, and but that can become an issue when people just have it too much. So
right. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's it. So if you guys have any other questions about this kind of stuff, let us know. You can send an email to info@teamlocofit.com. And if it's more appropriate for Lauren to answer, we'll forward it to her, get you your responses. And if you guys have not already subscribed to the podcast, we would really, really appreciate it. Subscribe, leave a review, tell us how great we are. Tell me how much you love when I mess up accents, phrases, just really, I mess up a lot of stuff. So if you like that, just let us know in the review. I'm really, really good at that. And then if you have any other questions about art, or want to see particles. Yeah, you want to see particles? Programs and articles, particles. We have both of those on the site. I should just retitle it Particles. So programs, articles, other podcasts. And apply for coaching.
Is this over?
And if you want to get me a speech therapist, you can also just fill out the contact form on teamlocofit.com, and then we can get that straightened out, and then I will be a lot better off. You should know what the podcast being created with meal timing. We were like crazy that day. I don't know. We were just like literally could not stop. Like we couldn't get it together. Like it was good information, but there were so many times where we just like fell off into crazy town. Like, I don't know. Like,
Jesus.
Yeah. It's some days I'm fine and other days, no.
We're not. Yeah. You know what? You never know what you're going to get. That's why this is exciting.
People seem to like it. So they're so interested in my accent.
They're like, I think that people probably fast forward through my parts and they just go to yours to see like what they're like, oh, she's talking again. Fast forward.
Or like when I made that video, the IGTV, and I'm trying to use an analogy, and you were like, literally, Lauren commented, she goes, I get so nervous every time you say an analogy.
It was like this deep Instagram IGTV video, and she like butchers this analogy at the beginning of it, and that's all I heard. So I comment on it like,
of course.
wow, that made me really anxious before you did that.
I know, but you know what? We've still got the information out there. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you next week.